Okay, we're back from our break, and you're listening to Dr. Rob, Spirits and Supernatural Show, and I'm Patrick, the Backwoods Tech, acting as a co-host for this evening. And we're getting ready to have on famous actor and comedian John Candy, who it's been about 17 years since his passing, and I was always a big fan of his work, and I remember I was very saddened when I found that, he had crossed over. So we're going to have him on there, and Dr. Rob, is he here right now?
Yes, he is, Patrick. I'm really anxious to speak to us both, and I've never experienced such an excited celebrity from the other side. He's very full of energy and full of life, even though he's been crossed over, like you said, for 17 years. When I touch in with him, I can see that special spirit that we saw in many of his films. He's definitely the same guy that he was when he was alive. I think even more so. One of the things that I sensed about him at the end of his life was he was suffering from depression. And so I felt that connection to him when I first touched in with him. And that's something that most people didn't really realize. He had a lot of sadness about him on the inside, even though he was so happy on the outside. And it was kind of not a shock necessarily to me personally, but it just was, oh, okay, now I understand where you're coming from.
Well, also, I was kind of reading up on his bio and things like that, and I'm sure this happens with a lot of actors and actresses, is, it can be stressful because sometimes their money or their work comes in lump sums and then it can slow down, so it kind of runs hot or cold, and I think toward the end of his, passing, even though he was working on a movie, there was probably some hot and cold spots there with his career, and I think that can probably also definitely add to somebody's mood or emotional levels. So that probably, I would imagine, is a factor. And if John can hear that, does he kind of agree on that?
He says that, he wasn't really worried about money necessarily, but just the performing part of it was really, what he was missing. He saw that his career was not going to be long lasting, and that was something that was a little bit of a depression for him. He said he was really typecast in many of the roles, and, once that happened, he said that it was difficult to get some of the other roles that he really wanted. And for him, that was the frustrating part. Staying working was the most important thing. And really, for him, he was, so busy with all the other activities in life. And his family, of course, was very important to him. And he says that was the thing that kept him going.
Wow, that's really neat. Now, what was the first thing that you did, John, when you did cross over to the other side?
He says to me that the first real thing for him was to visit his wife. He said that was the one thing that they were separated at the time, not maritally separated, but just not in the same area of each other. And that was one of the things that he actually went to her before she even knew that he had passed. He said that she was aware of him in the room with her, and then when she actually heard of his passing, she wasn't so taken aback by the situation. He says that he kind of warned her without just directly telling her something was going to happen to him, and he kind of made his peace with her and with the kids, and really that was one of the things that he was happy for. I think that he knew that once he traveled again, because he did a lot of traveling throughout his life, but that particular trip, he just didn't think he was going to come back from it.
So I guess he had kind of a gut feeling or just a premonition. I think he had even told people he had just had a bad feeling about going to Mexico where they were filming the movie. Now, when you did cross over, John, who was there to greet you?
He said that, even though he was really famous, he really was hoping that his grandmother would be there. He said that that was the one person that he wanted to see the most. He said that his father's mother and him were extremely close, and he had missed her at her passing because he was working on a film, and he didn't get to be there for her final days, and that was something that he always regretted. And so that was the one person that he wanted to be there for him. And he says that when he went to sleep that night of his passing, he had dreamt about her before his passing. And so it was like when he opened his eyes, she was there, and he was like, "Oh, you're here." And so it was really a nice moment for him, And he says that, with his passing, it was pretty much instantaneous. He really wasn't aware of the situation. He'd had a lot of health issues over the years, and he kind of, knew when something bad was going to happen with his heart. Especially, he felt that arrhythmia is what they call it, he says, and that was something he was kind of worried about. But yet, it happened so many times, and so it was something that he just kind of tried to ignore, even though he was feeling very tired and very worn out. He felt, well, maybe it's just from the filming, maybe it's from this, maybe it's from that, and he didn't really take it as a warning sign.
Okay, yeah, I know also, I think during the last year of his life, he had tried to improve his health or, lose some weight and quit smoking, but I guess unfortunately it was maybe a little too late, perhaps. Now also, now that he's crossed over, he's had a little time to get settled in on the other side since it's been about 17 years since his passing, but what is his daily life like now, or what kind of things does he do?
He says he's there to inspire others. He definitely gives messages to people without them knowing it. He says that, he's there to help future comedians, actors. He's really there for Charlie Sheen, believe it or not. That's what he said to me. He said that he's really concerned for him personally, and there's a lot of stars on the other side that have been looking after Charlie over the last few years, especially. But he said that Charlie and him never really had a relationship because he was not in the same area as Charlie. But he said that he always looked after those younger stars, and he said that one of the things that he was looking forward to in the future was some of these younger stars coming up and doing some of these new skits. He says that The Whitest Kids You Know was a Canadian show, and he says that he finds it really funny on the other side, some of the things they were doing in their seasons. And I have seen that show a couple of times myself. I watched a few episodes, and so he's kind of joking with me about some of the comedy. He said they stole a lot of his material over the years from his time on some of the earlier Canadian shows. He said that he wasn't upset about it, of course, it's on the other side, but he's just making note that some of the things that they have been doing were some of the things that he was doing. So, that's an interesting side note.
Yeah, it's probably not very surprising, though. I mean, he was very influential. I know I grew up watching a lot of his work and was a big fan, and I'm sure a lot of the people from my generation, a little bit younger, still remember his work. So his legacy is probably going to continue on for a long time. He probably has had a lot more influence on things than people would even realize. Now, did he get to do everything he really set out to accomplish when he was here? Because he died, only the age of 43, which was kind of young. He had accomplished a lot, but was there more that he had wanted to do or intended to do?
Well, he said for himself personally, the only thing that he really wanted to be was the father. And, as far as his work goes, he says it kind of stands on its own. As he stated to me a few moments ago about his career was not going in the direction he wanted it to, he felt really like, everything was coming to a close for him. And so for himself personally, he was kind of glad to go out on top and go out as a funny guy and not be thought of in a negative way, of course.
So I guess he was happier to leave on a high note, kind of. Throughout his career, though, he was in a lot of good movies, and his earlier start he got on SCTV. What was his favorite part of working on there?
He says that having that comedy camaraderie with the group. He did a lot of improv. That group was really, he said, together for many years before it was actually, shown on TV. They had actually worked with a lot of the actors, and they had become like a family. And for him, that was exciting to be up to do almost like a live performance every week. And he said he really liked the live stuff more than the tape stuff. He said that working on films for him was very frustrating. His attention span was not what it should have been. He said that really that took a lot of effort for him to be on a movie, but to be performing in a sketch routine was a little bit easier for him. He said he wasn't really good at memorizing things. He was much more into the improvisation, and he said that was one of the things that a lot of the directors were kind of disappointed in many ways, especially the script writers, he said, because they'd write it out for him, they'd give him the script, and he memorized most of it, but a lot of it was just off the cusp and, off the cuff, and just basically, whatever came to mind is what he said, and sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't, but he would just laugh, that's one of his things. He with this deep laugh, he's laughing for me now, it's almost like a ho 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 ho, and so I thought, well, Santa Claus, thinking about his size and everything, but I think that he said that he was very frustrating to work with, for sure.
Yeah, but I think that's some of the spontaneity of his performances is what made it interesting also, because with a lot of those comedians it's pretty common that they don't pre-rehearse things, and it makes it where you just never know what's going to happen next. So yeah, I can see that he probably would have definitely been probably frustrating to have to write scripts out for somebody's not going to follow it, so yeah, that's very interesting, because he also was born in Canada, so he grew up outside in the Canadian area. How was that for him when he was growing up?
He said he missed his country. He missed home. He said that even though he loved America and would love coming to America and working in America, he said there's nothing like Toronto area. He said that was a real blessing for him personally. He wouldn't have been the same guy. He said had he grown up anywhere else, he said that was really just his spot in the world. And he said that first he thought it was going to be the only place he'd ever be. He never thought about going to Hollywood. That was not really a goal for him. And he just did a lot of community theater, a lot of things like that in his youth. And he figured, well, I'm Canadian, I'm going to stay Canadian, I'm going to be here, it's going to be my life. He was a real outdoorsman. He said he loved being outdoors, especially in the winter. And I would kind of question his sanity on that. He's kind of laughing at me. He's like, I'm thinking 40 below in the Arctic wasteland. And of course, we have a lot of Canadian listeners, and that's just a little side joke that I always make with them. I'm like, really, what is it like to live in the Arctic Circle? And so being from Florida and being from the tropics down there, having that for the last 30-some years, anything above below 70 is pretty cold. So he shows me now him dressed in these big fur jackets and the hats and everything else. He said he loved it. He said if it wasn't for the cold, he said that it was very disappointing to him to be in the tropical islands. He said that was not a place that he would have liked to be. And I was like, really? Okay. So.
Yes, that is very interesting. I mean, I know it gets cold here, but I can't even imagine how much colder it probably gets as you go up further north. Another thing was, what was it that had caused him to, leave Second City Television when he was on there?
He said it was basically just time to go move on. He said that really the production quality had gone down from what it was originally. It wasn't fun anymore. People were becoming full of themselves. He said that was really, something that he wasn't really wanting to be a part of. He knew that he had bigger and better things to do, and once he got picked up here in the States, he said it kind of just helped everyone's career take off. He talked to me about Dave Foley, some of the others, that were connected to the Canadian world, and he said that, once everybody, kind of had that, connection, it was kind of like, okay, now we're Hollywood, it's not the same.
Okay, yeah, because he also, I know, later on, had, moved into doing some British comedy, too. So what was, excuse me, the real difference, or what was different about the Canadian comedy as opposed to the British type of comedy?
He said that with the Canadians, it's much more upbeat. They're not so stuck on themselves, he says. And I was laughing about that, too. He said he kind of just, stood up. When he said that, he kind of just stood upright and just kind of gave me that very proper look. And he said that, even though, that connection's there with the governments, having the Queen and all that. But, he said for himself personally, he liked the Canadian comedy better. He said it was much more laid-back environment for him personally. They weren't so uptight.
Okay, so so it probably was a good change of venue for him then. It sounds like he has some fond memories of that. Now, he did a large body of movies. What would be his favorite movie that he probably enjoyed working on the most?
He says that I kind of mentioned it at the beginning of the hour unintentionally. He said Canadian bacon was one of his favorites. He said that was really just such a spoof on the whole Canadian American thing. And he said when he was a kid, they had always talked about going to war with America to take back over, New York and some of the other states that they lost during the original dividing of the continent basically. And he said that for him that was just the best movie ever. He said that it was just such a fun thing to make fun of, and to go to war over beer, he says, is just the perfect thing. For himself personally, he wasn't a big drinker. He wasn't one to really drink much, but of course, being Canadian, he has to drink the beer, and so that was kind of just an excuse to kind of poke fun at himself and some of the other rednecks is what he called them. I was like, really? Wow.
Yeah, no, I know. One of my favorite movies was Uncle Buck, like I mentioned. I always kind of wondered, was that character pretty much similar to his real life personality?
He said that was a lot like his family life. He had a lot of connections to his children, his nieces, his nephews. For him, that was just pretty much who he was. He said that that connection to nature as well. For him that was just a blast. That's what he keeps saying. It was just a blast.
That was a classic. But I always liked his personality in there, and I felt that was probably the closest to how he probably really was. So I thought that was a really neat movie. Also, is there anything he really misses from this living world when he was here?
He says that, as far as missing anything from this world, no. He said that, he has everything that he needs on the other side. He was very satisfied with his accomplishments. It really was, very peaceful, for him personally, really every day for him is a new adventure. They don't really have time and space like we have here, and they're aware of time, but, earthly time, but yet there's an eternity. And he said that, he has a lot of interest on the other side, inspiration, a lot of work to do for others, and this makes his whole existence very fulfilling.
Okay, now, who does he mostly associate with now that he's crossed over?
He says that he has a lot of friends, a lot of comedians who've crossed over. He said one of his best friends is John Ritter. They're very close to one another. They have similar passings, and he was kind of there for John when John passed. He was, kind of one of the ones who was there to greet him and help him along on the other side. And he said that he always respected his work, even back from Three's Company days, and some of the other bodies of work that John had been involved with. And he said that that was kind of one of his buddies on the other side, if you want to call it that.
Okay, I know we were planning down probably in the next few weeks to actually try and have John Ritter on here, so that was kind of interesting he'd mentioned that. Normally we'd ask if he was here now, but there's plenty of questions for John, so that'll have to be another show. But yeah, I was a big fan of Three's Company and all of John Ritter's work also, so that's really neat. Now, is there really, is there anything he would have wished he had done differently in this life?
He said for himself personally, taking care of his health, that would be the thing that he would have the regrets for the most. Having his health back, having a longer time with his children, that was one of the things that had he been able to pay attention more to his weight, he said he probably would not have had the situations that he had.
Okay, so when he's looking back, what would he say was probably the happiest period of his life?
He said his childhood growing up. He said that he had a really happy childhood. It was something that, he had a lot of memories later when he was suffering from depression, that he would think about his days as a youth and hunting and fishing and just, being outdoors, was really the big thing for him personally.
Okay. Now, is he planning it maybe any time in the future to maybe, return amongst the living or have another life down here? Or is he just kind of content where he's at?
He said there's not really any plans in our generations. He said it'll be several generations before he makes it back here. But he does look forward to coming back.
Okay, and I'm sure he, since he does have 2 children still here, as far as I know, I'm sure he spends some time watching what they're doing. I think his daughter's also into some acting and production as well.
He says he's very proud of her. He says that, for her, he didn't really want his kids to be Hollywood, but he says that she's got her head on her shoulders, and he's not worried for her. He said that really, for him personally, it's satisfaction to see the family name go on, and some of the work that she's going to be involved with as a writer and as a producer is going to be just amazing.
Wow, we'll have to look forward to definitely, following some of her work as well then. Now, we are getting ready to have to take a break soon, so is there any message or anything or advice he has to those of us that are still on the side of the living, or anything he wants to say?
So be happy. Laugh every day and be happy.
That's actually pretty much probably what I expected from John Candy, so it's really been great to have him on here, and I hope everything continues to go well on the other side, and we'll be right back after our break.